For those who just came into this interview, welcome. And this particular interview is inspired by our Prime Minister the other day at late April during his TV interview. He mentioned that he envisioned that digital economy or the adaptation to digital tools in their daily life and economy of our Malaysians will play a big role after MCO. So here we are, four of us together, Peter, me, and then Mr. Hugo will be interviewing our guests, Dr. Chua and Mr. Howie from Forward School and Dr. Chua from Smart Factory. We will share with all of you on their perspective and their ideas, their imaginations, how Malaysia will look like after MCO, and also the opportunities that lie ahead for us. All right. And first thing first, how this works is we'll have about three main categories or categories of questions that we will pose to both of you. So both of you can feel free to take turn to answer. And at the same time, we'll also take questions from the audience if there is any. All right. And at the very end of the interview, we'll allocate some time for both of you to share a bit about your respective organizations so that we can let more people know about what Dr. Chua is doing and what Mr. Howie is doing. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Yeah.
Cool. Let's kickstart the first question. First thing first, challenges and opportunities for SMEs. The very first question that comes into mind, because everyone kept saying, oh, SMEs will be very challenged. It will be very like an uphill battle down the road. We have, but to ask about the transitions to e-commerce in our current situation, as everyone is transitioning to e-commerce, who do you see that has a higher advantage to utilize this, and who might be left behind? Like what kind of businesses that, in your opinion, maybe Dr. Chua can start it first?
Sure. I think in terms of adaptability of SMEs or even business owners in these difficult times is very, very important. And I think when the MCO sort of started, there are a lot of initiatives that were set out to really help the business owners and the SMEs to really go digital. I think there's a lot of initiatives done by MDEC in particular, and a lot of other tech companies also offered a lot of assistance to really help these business owners. I think one of the good ideas that sort of started off was how to help the food industry sort of get the hang of it in terms of this digital economy, and especially in terms of those hawker stalls, right? So those hawker stalls, they've been operating for very, very long. They serve very, very good food, I'm pretty sure. But when it comes to digital savviness, that's where they face a little bit of trouble to get on board during this MCO period. And I think there's a lot of good initiatives that were set up to really help these hawker stalls, like, Food Panda, Grab Food. There's even another sort of a Subang specific kind of delivery person that does all the purchase online and to deliver food, which was actually brilliant. And, this actually helps the SMEs and business owners, in the food industry to sort of stay ahead. Those who will be left behind, I would say, will be those who are not ready to go digital. There are certain industries that probably could not do it. For example, like hair salons, that you need to be physically there to cut your hair no matter what you do. So those industries, unfortunately, are heavily affected. However, during these difficult times, I always feel that there are ways to innovate, to gain customer engagement, especially during the difficult times like this. And this actually helps you to stay ahead when MCO is lifted, right? The moment it's lifted, what's the next initiative, what's the next move that you have in place, and that I think is a very important step, to think about during this kind of difficult period for adaptability.
Right, thank you. Very fruitful fruit of thought at the very beginning of the interview instead. And how about Mr. Howie?
I think I concur and I agree pretty much with what Dr. Chua is saying. And I think if you go around, this is the exact sentiment as well, right? Those that, I mean, in one way or another, it's also it's also a situation where the fittest will survive, and I think in one way or another, this entire situation forces all of us to to kind of really sit up and recognize that, hey, there are really certain industries. If we don't go online, for example, if we don't digitize, for example, it's going to be very tough for any one of us to catch up in the future. And so I guess at this point in time, everyone is pretty alert, everyone is pretty aware, and recognize the need to, future-proof for the digital economy. And I think we can kind of really see that in the education sector as well, right? If you all can recall, initially, the Ministry of Education actually said that, no online learning as well. If you can still remember the article. And I think it really forces the ministry to kind of really recognize that, all of us, in terms of every layer, whether is it in the federal or the state or in the state agencies, in the sense, we need to really prepare ourselves to go online. And I think this is, a lot of people say that, that shows that we are not ready and all that. But I think it's never too late for anything. And I think this situation will help, many of us to upskill ourselves, to recognize that you can't just be consumers of technology, but as well as creators of technology. And everyone needs to embrace it and adopt it. Yeah, that's how I see it.
I think Mr. Howie actually raised a very interesting point, right? So you actually talk about the education, which is very, very true indeed. I mean, for many years, we have been talking about Vestari schools, we have been talking about online learning, but most of the schools and colleges in Malaysia, right, most of them are mostly paying lip service to it. But I think this season really forces them to really evaluate what kind of infrastructure that they have and how they can actually transition their classes online. And as of today, after the government say no online learning, after that, I think there is they actually changed the they actually reversed the decision, right?
Yes.
Yep. I have also heard that, for example, Monash, from Dr. Chua, right? You are with Monash. I think you are in their advisory board for some of the IFF. Yep. Very good. So in Monash, I think they are full-fledged online learning, full-fledged even online examinations. I'm not sure the specifics of how they do that. Yeah. And the crazy thing is that there are actually universities that decided to implement online learning for the rest of the year.
Yes. In fact, there are actually many universities that actually started that path to go fully online for the rest of the year. And I think that sort of spearheads some thoughts on how to innovate the way we do assessments, right? Because on the traditional side, when we do assessment, especially for us in SHRBC as well, we are a lot to do with competency-based hands-on programs. So how do we then go virtual while maintaining the assessment of competency of the individuals that come for programs, on an everyday basis? So, are we going to do virtual labs? Are we going to find a way to evaluate them in a social distancing method? So what's going to happen from there? So and I think when examinations go digital, online exams, there's actually a lot of trust being given to the universities on the students to actually submit their papers on time, answer the questions independently. So it bridges a lot of gaps there, I think.
Very true.
On top of that, I cannot help but to ask this very critical question. It's like what Hugo said just now. Instead of transitioning to what we say a newer way of learning, like completely go into that environment of digital learning, so to speak, or online learning, it still feels to me like, especially for public education, that realm, we are still treating as like a +1 package. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Instead of totally rethink, okay, in this new world that we are digitalizing every single thing that is imaginable, instead of going that path and redesign our whole learning process, our whole learning blueprint, it still feels to me like, why don't we just add another computer class nationwide? Because that was the blueprint that was being given down, and schools will reluctantly implement it, and we add on workload to teachers, everyone complains, students hate it, and it doesn't help anyone. It still feels to me like that way. What's your response? Maybe Mr. Howie can take it first.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, and it's a real question. But I would still say that this, at the very least, it's a good start for us.
Yeah.
And I mean, Rome is not built in a day. But what we are seeing is that at the very least, people are getting started. And I'm seeing those people who has always been, standing by the sidelines, not doing anything. Now they are forced to, do something. And I think, that is a positive note, right? So that's one. Two is, I think there's also, and not just in education, right? I think even as a business, we need to be extremely mindful that we are not, and there's also a risk in which that you move everything, 180 degrees in a sense, meaning from a total on campus to fully online, right? And of course, that also depends, in terms of education, that also depends on your philosophy, right? In terms of what's the best methods to transfer knowledge, for example. And for us, we are a big believer of the blended approach. In fact, we do see that the best way to transfer knowledge, especially in terms of hands-on, right? It's nothing still beats being on campus, working in teams, face-to-face, right? But obviously, as technology progresses, that can be done in the virtual world as well, right? That's why you have the Oculus and you have all your, your goggles and all that. Although at this point in time, it's still at its infancy, hologram technology and all that. So the day will come, and I think this is a good start in a sense. And I don't think, yes, it might feel not natural, but I think globally everyone is feeling that as well, because the most advanced countries that we see, even like in China and US, in terms of their public education, is not yet kind of 100% virtual and online, because they also recognize that there is plus points in meeting face to face, right? Working with your colleagues or your teammates for a project, right? So I'm optimistic that things will return back to normal. I mean, we can term it the new normal. There will be certain areas that we have to adapt and change and upgrade. But I think the entire notion of, killing face-to-face in terms of education specifically, we are still some way away. So I don't think that will entirely go away. Because in the end of the day, COVID will be gone. Hopefully, they will find a cure for it, in a sense, or vaccine for it. But obviously, everyone will be more ready. But who knows, right? Maybe the next time round is even a bigger biological war. Even everyone needs to go underground. That presents another new challenge. So I guess we just need to do our very best in light of our current situation, weighing the pros and cons, being prepared for the future, but yet, sticking on to kind of what we really believe in, that's in line with our philosophy, and how we can balance that off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Howie, for the response. How about Dr. Chua? How do you see it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Howie mentioned. We definitely can't, take away the entire face-to-face interaction. The whole campus environment and feel is always there. And, people work better in teams. When you see people physically, it's very much a different feel altogether. And I think that kind of campus feel can never be replaced virtually at the moment. You still need that kind of interaction, face to face. But at this kind of time, what I would say is, virtual learning, virtual training, online learning, it should be taken as a step towards re-innovating the way we do learning and teaching. Yeah, because that will be the part where it will set a lot of people apart. And it will also give a very good perspective on how you learn more effectively, efficiently, and productively. Because, sometimes it's not productive to sit down in a 2-hour class. Maybe it's more productive to do a blended approach, a flipped classroom, to learn on your own and then go and do it. So, that re-innovates the way we do teaching, training, and learning. And I think that will give a whole different perspective post MCO, how we want to consider the innovation in teaching and learning.
I think what Dr. Chua say is on point as well, and especially what Mr. Howie say on the blended learning approach, right? Because if we look at it in the education sector, it's not just the learning part of it, but also the way they do marketing, the way they do a lot of their meetings. And through this MCO period, we realize a lot of people actually take the initiative, right, to actually convert their open days to online open days. Still getting students to come in. Exactly, Peter. And virtual classes just for people to try it out. Yeah. And at the same time, some of the feedback that we receive is that some of the more quiet students, for example, somehow in an online learning environment, they do not feel so threatened. They are willing to voice out. So there could be some pros to it as well. Of course, we realize what Dr. Chua said, right? Sometimes the long lecture format might not be so relevant. Right now, we are looking at self-paced learning. We are looking at bite-sized learning, where students can go online and see, okay, this is the section I want to learn, right? So let's watch a video on this and give feedback and see what is it that I need from the instructor next. Yeah. What do you think, Peter? Anything you want to add to that?
As a heavy meme consumer, let me go from perspective of meme lovers. So this afternoon, I was indulging or entertaining myself with a meme. So in conventional classes, all the students, every single students would want to make noise. They want to talk to their friends next table, in front, all the direction. Okay, very noisy. Teachers are annoyed. But in this new type of classrooms, teachers are begging for students to make some noise. Someone please respond to me. How do both of you think that teachers are adapting? mean, it must be a very confusing situation for teachers.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely, virtual learning now seems very much like a one-way, right? And I think that that's why when I see a lot of webinars, right, when they talk about renovating the way you do teaching, you use good tools, to engage with your students, which is like PEDAC, Mentimeter, to get feedback. And that feedback is what, starts to create engagement in the class through virtual kind of engagement. Because without that, it's one way, and then students will probably be maybe not on the screen, and one of the feedback that I saw from a webinar, how to really create engagement is, no matter what happens, turn on your cameras, right? Even for the teachers as well. Sometimes they don't want to turn on their cameras because their background is probably a bit messy, or you have some other things in the background. But you see, when you encourage that kind of thing, it's sort of you're looking at your students' expression as well, and your students can see you virtually. That creates a very different feel altogether online, rather than I see a totally black screen, right? Yeah, that will be something not very effective in engagement.
Yeah,
I think that is Are we?
Sorry, you go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Just now, Dr. Chua mentioned about turning on the camera and ideas like that, right? I think at the end of the day, although we are really distant, from an online learning perspective, people still want the human touch. People still want to see the faces of people that they are talking to. So
virtual connections.
I think, yeah. Not just we are digitalizing what is at first a physical environment, but we are also humanizing our digital experience. How can we get people to interact better, right? And still maintain that human presence. Yes, back to you, Mr. Howie. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that, a lot of cases, again, on education front, I think we are just scraping the surface. We are kind of really scraping the surface, because what everyone is doing at this point in time is basically whatever that they are doing in the physical teaching world, they are trying to mimic it online, right? Virtual. Meaning what they are used to do on campus, basically they are just streaming it over Zoom, for example, right? And for example, like my children, what they are doing right now is that they are in primary school. What they are doing right now is that every morning, the teacher will, go online and talk to them, 8 o'clock, welcome them. And the rest of the days basically are activities, okay? And, another word for activities is basically homeworks lah. So the approach here is that the teachers will be creating all these activities and then load them up for the students to do, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously, if you know which tool to use, it'll be better for the school and the student. There are lots of tools out there, right? But in my opinion, I think, I hope that even after this pandemic and even as people going back to normalcy and all that, I would hope that, the schools and even for educators to further, explore, not just as in transferring whatever that you do online, but hey, how do we really design, a structure and a pathway, right? And that might be very different, right? And when we talk about, Hugo was talking about bite size, right? What does that really mean? Is it a bite size of text? Is it a bite size of video? Is it after watching 5 minutes of video, they do a tutorial, right? So recently I signed up for this app. It's called Noom. It's basically to help you have a better relationship with your food, and it's a weight loss kind of program, right? And that in itself is a learning journey for me, and all done online. But what I felt is that the experience is very intentional, and it's really designed for someone that is interested to improve their relationship with food, as well as going into a weight loss program, right? So they did it very differently. They did it on the mobile only concept, and they peppered with very intentional nugget size so that you don't get boring day after day. Every day you have something to do, and this takes a lot of time. So I just wanted to say that we are just scraping the surface.
Yeah.
We have not kind of really sit down and reinvent, for a lack of a better word, how, for example, we can deliver this particular topic. And I think for Forward School, we are passionate in that front lah. Yeah.
That's a very creative analogy that how we use. Peppered it and nuggets, and we put it together in sandwiches. I might try to use that in the future. It's very easy to imagine what you're trying to say. So, on top of that, to again, before we roll on another round of Q&A, I must ask, on behalf of, after all this nurturing of talents and they went to school, I believe most of those talents will go to corporate sectors and work for employers, in the private economy. I cannot help but to ask, how can the current, let's say, institutions, public schools, private schools, training institutions like both of yours are doing, how can they actually provide what the post-MCO digital economy wants, what those employer really needs? Like earlier this afternoon, I was joking around. Even for the retail outlets, for the malls across the nation, right? Even to apply as a sales associate after MCO, I believe one of the requirements that every sales applicants will be required to have is the skill to look into the camera, maybe every day, 1 hour, and to try and sell the product on behalf of your supervisor or your boss. Be it shoes, be it smartphone case, fragrance, whatever it is. How do you think we can fill in the gap after MCO for, talents in the digital world? Maybe Dr. Chua can take it first, since Howie answered just now. Mm-hmm.
Sure, no problem. So I think that talents nowadays, especially the younger ones, they are more or less, I think, quite digital savvy. They should be able to grasp, the technical aspects of the technology very, very quickly. And in fact, apps, mobile phones, are made for it to be user friendly anyways. So I think it's more of how we utilize tools to help us in our daily life, post MCO, and even for those in different industries, they need to think about what kind of tools, are out there that they can actually leverage on to help their businesses grow. Then, the talents that they have, when they recruit, they need to identify these sort of skill sets, from all the talents, as in, do you know how to do simple coding, for example? Do you know how to do simple app development, right? And that, I think, is very, very important skill post MCO, the digital skill. It's not so much anymore about, very much the technical, as in like, how to fix machines and all that. Yeah, that's still required. But when you talk about the wider digital economy, that's where, the software skills are very, very important. And when you need software skills, you need software developers. And that's where all the coding framework, all of that needs to come into play. And as technology advances, things are not getting more difficult. It shouldn't be. It should be easier. And in fact, like when we do training, the tools that we use are practically, designed to be, easy for the community to adapt. when we talk about post MCO digital economy, we're not only looking at the talent pipeline. We also need to look at the current workforce, right? The current workforce that needs to be upskilled for the next phase to adapt to the digital economy. So to teach someone who is probably very, very senior in the company, like 10 years, is a domain expert in that company, but to teach them how to do critical coding, that is very, very difficult, right? So that's why we teach them how to use tools like drag and drop type of mechanisms, which is very quickly you can get some results very, very fast. And that those kind of tools or innovation, flow-based development tools are very, very much I think in hype now. And I would say that, as AirAsia says, everybody can fly. I believe everybody can code eventually. Yeah, so that's the idea that I think talent should move forward to post MCO. Not only for the younger generation, but also for the current workforce to really think about that digital savviness that they need to adapt to.
That's a very strong statement. Now everyone can code. So I that feels to me like the ball is now moving towards Howie. What do you think about this?
I mean, to just add on Dr. Chua, right? I mean, the digital competency, it's a must, right? But at the same time, I was doing another show, I think last week, we also discussed that. I also given my views that besides the digital competency, right, in the post-MCO world, it is so much more important for you to have better human skills, meaning communication skills, right? And I'm sure all of you, are already aware, when we work at home, it feels a bit more tired when you're doing video calls because, it's quite intense, right? It's very, you need to kind of really focus, and you tend to be more aware about what you talk, and when you even type on chat, Slack, you tend to communicate more. And I think it really forces everyone to recognize that, hey, the soft skills, in light of the future, it will become increasingly more important, right? To be thinking creatively, to be able to kind of share your ideas in a manner that people understand. So yeah, just to add on Dr. Chua's point on that front. So back to your question on basically, if everyone can code, I would say that, it really depends on what's your definition of code, right, and program. For us, we believe that not everyone will end up with a job becoming a programmer in a sense, but we do believe that everyone needs to a certain extent understand how these things work. And it becomes part of the basic foundational literacy. And it will happen eventually. The public schools are already introducing programming into the syllabus. And we are seeing that. So that's a natural progression. Everyone, to a certain extent, will know how to code, at least HTML, CSS. But I would say that not everyone will end up as a programmer, right? So that competency needs to be there. And we are a believer, which is why we also started Forward School to ensure that, hey, anyone that wants to upskill, right, they can, right? But of course, at the same time, as of today, if you look at it, I would say that, in terms of comm science and IT and software engineering, the unfortunate thing, I think, and this is my personal opinion, is that it's still being sold as in a very nerd kind of thing, right? Mm. As in, it's not being sold. It can be sold much more sexier, right?
Right.
Because when students, when they finish Form 5, a lot of them nowadays, they prefer marketing or business, right? We see a rise in courses in marketing and business and all that. And it's unfortunate because I felt that there's not enough effort to kind of sell, software engineering or even computer science in a way that would inspire these students, right? Because in their head, it's all about 0 and 1. Oh, I don't know how to code. I don't want to be in front of the computer every day. But that's just one side of it, right? So I think a lot more can be done on that side.
Yeah, and to add a little bit on what Howie is saying, yes, it's not attractive enough of how the pop culture or the main street is looking at the technological talents. We often see in movies, in TV shows, the tech guys are always geeky, wearing hoodie. They run around with their headphones and their laptops. They don't really talk to people. But in real life, today we have, you all can see Dr. Chua and Howie. They look completely cool. They are not like that at all. Doesn't have to be that way. So there's also has to be some kind of rebranding to lure, to attract up and coming tech talents especially for our country. And
I think just to add, and I think MDEC is doing great efforts. They are doing a great job in promoting, for example, like data science as well as software engineering. And if you go to their YouTube channel recently, and also through their, my digital maker initiatives, I think to many extent, a lot more people are talking about upskilling now. And I think the entire COVID-19 pandemic further accelerates the desire for people to recognize that, hey, really, a lot of business, brick and mortar businesses all die already. It's all the geeks that is doing so well. Apple is selling even more than ever. All the e-commerce stores are booming.
Perhaps that's what we will see even on dating apps. Expectations, tech geeks preferred. If you can code, I would like you even more. If we can make it to that extent, we can definitely attract both men and women to go into tech. And maybe we can let Hugo to kickstart the last part of the question that we would like to ask about infrastructure. So maybe Hugo can ask a question for both.
Definitely. So we are actually talking a lot about what kind of opportunities that are ahead, what people should do, what businesses should do, what schools should do. But there is this one aspect, right, that we never really address. Do we have the infrastructure in place? I'll give you an example, right? Let's say we started off this session with education. A lot of feedback that we have heard is that even if schools want to implement e-learning, but they are a segment, not to say a segment, but they are still a huge segment of society with subpar internet connection. And surprisingly, there are still students without a proper laptop or maybe a proper software. So the access.
Especially in rural areas, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the reason why the ministry is hesitant to make e-learning compulsory, or allow it to run at the first place, right? So that is education. And there is also the business side of things, right? If we look at mobile penetration and things like that, yes, in Southeast Asia, Malaysia is kind of up there, is decent. But if we look at other infrastructure, we are still way back. What do you think, or Howie? Where are we lacking, and what do we need?
I think in the end of the day, obviously, I mean, obviously I can look at the not so bright side, and the reality is that we are lacking in many fronts, right? And that in terms of infra, there are many areas that we can obviously do better, right? But at the same time, for me, is that there's not much of a point to also talk about it in a sense, if I may. I can go on and say that, oh yeah, it's true, the schools they don't even have laptop, then no need to say already lah, go home already. There's nothing to do already. In the kampong, for example, in the rural areas, for example, like Sarawak and Sabah and all that, there's no internet, or for example, right? Then what can you do? You cannot do anything already, right? So I think to a certain extent, the country is still improving, still progressing on that front, and there's a lot of things that we can still do, right? But I would like to kind of highlight that in the end of the day, right, whether is it the government, or whether is it the student themselves, or whether is it the teachers, or whether is it businesses, right? I think the most important thing is the mindset, right? Whether culturally or from a mindset perspective, are we ready? So it's very difficult for us to change other people, right? And it's even more difficult for us to think about how are we going to bring internet to the ulu kampong. Not that we cannot discuss about it, but I would say that I think if we break it down, then we can start with ourselves, we can start with our community, and we can start to really adopt the digital mindset. And what I mean by having the digital mindset is that, and you will be very surprised, right? On for example, like certain federal agencies or state agencies, right? Across even the world, not just even in Malaysia. A lot of times when they invite you to a meeting, they literally send you a snail mail, So to me, there's no point talking about the big digital transformation when simple things like that is not yet done.
That's
right?
still happening.
That's still happening, right?
Okay.
So for example, like booking people's time using a calendar, G Suite, I think those are little steps, and I feel that it is not so much about the infra or whether there's a lack of tool, but I think it's about the mindset, right? Because if the bosses have the right mindset, they will put the necessary budget in those areas. So if you don't have the mindset, if you always constantly think that those are not important, it's not a priority, then you will forever not have the money there, right? Or the budget to execute on some of these digital initiatives. So I guess that's my response to that. Yeah. So I guess it's really about the mindset we are talking about, and as well as in the company's culture, is our leaders ready to embrace this or not? It's a leadership culture, right? How do they talk to the millennials, right? Things like that. How fast they adopt all these new technologies. So I would say that it's a lot about the leadership culture. It's a lot about the mindset of the people.
I love what how we have actually talked about the mindset and the culture, because at the end of the day, to really kickstart anything, right, to have the momentum, the mindset and culture must be in place. So for that, I would like to ask Dr. Chua, right, because personally you have been trying to spearhead IR 4.0. You have been doing a lot of education. You are trying to rope in agencies and schools. What is the feedback and what is the culture like so far locally?
I think in terms of industries, the awareness level of Industry 4.0 is there. They attend a lot of talks, they attend a lot of seminars. There's a lot of hype in the past 2 years, talking about the same topic over and over again. But
you mean among company leaders?
Yeah, company leaders, managers, they attend a lot of seminars. In fact, when I go to seminars and talks, I see the same faces most of the time, right?
Oh, wow.
It's very common. So, you start bumping into that, hey, you're here again. So, the awareness is there for sure. But the next question is digital adoption, right? And Howie brought up a very important point, which is, leadership commitment, right? Without commitment from the leaders, that it is very difficult to push innovation within the company, right? You need to drive or spearhead that kind of change mindset, change. You need to instill the culture of change within a lot of people in your company, especially those who are, very, very senior in the company, 10, 12 years, they know everything, they are the domain expert, they don't want to change. Or not to say don't want, but very difficult to take that first step. And
reluctant.
Yeah, there's a lot of hesitation behind it. But once it sort of drives through from the leadership down to the subordinate level, that sort of starts to instill a lot of culture in them. And one thing we saw from some industries is that when we talk about talent development, upskilling, reskilling, some of the industries they don't see it as an importance. Why? Because the culture has been there in the many years before that, if I want something, I'll just buy, right? There's solutions out there, I will just probably buy it off the shelf, which is okay, it's an option. But the idea of instilling, talents, building up your talents, not only, increases their skill, but increases their motivation. It sort of creates loyalty to the company, and it sort of gives them a drive to improve within the company, right? And that sort of helps the company to build a more sustainable ecosystem, within the company. And that's actually a very multinational company kind of culture. You have innovation teams, you have development teams that build, your whole assembly line for you before you buy off to production. And that actually creates a lot of culture, and employees just want to stay. Regardless, they just want to stay. But you have some industries which I'm just there to fix the machine, I'm just there to troubleshoot, and there's no drive for innovation or design or even development. So I think that's very much along the side of the culture, like what Howie has shared, that the leadership commitment to drive design development within the company, to drive digital transformation or new transformations. And that will actually create more opportunities for higher skilled kind of workforce or work. And it will actually drive a better, employment or employability for the next talent pipeline. Yeah.
So that's a very solid statement on that. How do we actually think digitally instead of just purchasing solution, like how we go into convenience store? So that brings me to a question for both of you. How, if for example, like what Dr. Chua said just now, despite the mass acceptance of among corporate leaders of the digital economy and all the changes that will come, some corporate leaders or some founders might still find it challenging for them to redesign their whole company from scratch so that they can adapt into the new world. So if I were someone that is coming from the conventional business, so to speak, how do I lead my company to transition to the new world, so to speak, post MCO, and how do I adapt to the digital economy? It can be difficult. It's already mentally uncomfortable for me if I were to transition from conventional corporate culture to the digital culture. So maybe Howie can take the question first.
I think this is not an easy topic, and I would say that in the end of the day, it really depends very largely, mainly on who is driving it, and how serious he is. And in my opinion, this is it will be most effective if it is top down, right? Meaning that the main driver in itself needs to understand what he's talking about, lah. It's not just hey, you go and research and then you go and execute, right? A lot of times it's like that. Right?
Let's buy another computer or buy another software. Then we're a digital company.
Yes, but buying is one thing, but taking into consideration and really understanding the complexities, it's important. And a lot of times, these leaders, they don't understand the complexities. They think that once you buy, you can implement and that's it, right? And a lot of times they would give up halfway. They would just feel that, hey, this is not working.
Too difficult.
Right? Too difficult or too early, right? But I would say that, it's all IT projects, digital implementation projects is not easy, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, the stakeholders need to be very clear and committed. That's one. Two is obviously they need to be appointing people who have shown that they are capable to deliver, right? And this translates also to startups, right? Sometimes a lot of times, and because again, the capital might not be there or the commitment might not be there, right? So they want to do it, but they want to do it very cheap. So and so they go and hire a developer that is not tested and proven, right? And a lot of them ended up in disaster, right? They try to build something and then it doesn't work, and then they burn the money, and then they have no more money left, and that's it, right? So again, to me, this is they have no experience executing, right? Or they don't understand the complexities of it, and I would say that there's no shortcut, but to a certain extent. Now, I mean, we are talking about businesses and all that. Obviously, the leaders and the stakeholders are very important, right? But an example that I want to pull out is also when it comes to, for example, government or state government. A lot of good policies can be put in place to encourage and propel digitization in certain areas, right? And that's another example of top-down, right? Very simple thing. For example, like Penang recently launched this parking coupon online using the app, right? I'm not going to comment about the implementation and all that, but in the end of the day, right? It's the heart of it is the intention is good. And I think it is a good thing because it sort of forces everyone to digitize, right? Whether you like it or not, you have to learn. And to a certain extent, I think that is good in moving people. And recently, the state have also announced that all wet markets will have to accept e-payments, right? Whether is it GrabPay or whatever. So I think that in a way that encourages people to adopt, right? Digital, whether is it tools or e-wallet and things like that. So I guess that's my take. In the end of the day, it's about who is driving it, how committed you are. It's not about tools and all that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Howie. Yeah. So the transition of mindset is more important than ever. It's not like you're going to convenience store, just buy solution, then you're a digital company. So that I have to also divert the question to Dr. Chua. Mm-hmm. Like in your field of expertise, in Malaysia, even though a majority of the registered companies are in the service sector, we still cannot deny the importance of the manufacturing sectors. Yeah. So if I were to come from like conventional manufacturing sector, I make products in the conventional way. I've been making money all this while. Why should I make the leap, and how
Yeah. So I think that's actually a very good question, and a lot of times, a lot of companies always have this perception that IR 4.0 will double or triple my revenue, or it will even bring me to the next level. And a lot of companies that we speak to, the first thing they talk about is I want to achieve AI, I want to achieve analytics. That's the first thing that they probably say. And most of the time, my first question would be, do you have data? Right? That's the first question that we will usually ask. Do you have data? Because AI and analytics, how is it built? It's built on data. It's learning based on information, right? That goes along your company, and it's not just a one-day thing or a one-week thing. It's for a long run. When we look at algorithms and so on. So I think when industries see the big picture, they get the idea, but they also see it as complex. And they also see it as it's a lot to take in at one time, and okay, like, wow, all these things from data collection all the way to analytics, wow, it looks like an expensive move, expensive transformation. And most of them, they can't see it for themselves, because when you go to seminars, when you go to these kind of talks, you don't see, you don't get to see and touch the technology that you are pitching, right? So that's why we sort of set up the smart factory, actually, to help the industries to see it as a model factory, right? So we actually built sort of a model assembly line, and we integrate everything together to show them how technology shouldn't be taught as difficult. It shouldn't be taught as complex. It should be taught as very flexible tools, to integrate it all together. And when we talk about technologies, it's not just when you look at the US way of doing bridging technologies, right? Let's say you talk about even platforms like Trello, Slack. All these are connected platforms, right? So technology should also be integratable. It should be connected, right? And that's how we usually explain to industries that when you want to search for a solution, think about not only today, but think about tomorrow. Because tomorrow things will be extremely different, and you don't want to sort of hit a roadblock again to say that, oh, I can't scale up because this is not compatible, right? Technology should be compatible in that sense. So, the manufacturing industry, yes, I would say that leadership and cost plays a very big factor when convincing their management to go ahead. But, the concept of the model factory sort of gives them a little bit more assurance that, this is doable. Right? It's not just a concept out of a mind that, oh yeah, I can do it. But we actually show that, yes, it can be done, and we can teach you, right? So that's what we actually do. And, what we do extra now is we actually support some of the industries through post-training support, right? We give it as a service, to support them through that first step. Usually it takes one first step. Once they sort of get the idea, they see, wow, okay, it gives me some improvement in terms of visibility, and management can see data not from the whiteboard anymore, taken from a photograph in a phone, but they can see it running on their PC, right? Wherever they are. So then it builds quick win projects. So quick win projects then translates to a culture of digital transformation, because it builds confidence to the people, to the management. And from there, they can decide how they want to build their roadmap all together. And I think that is, a good way to kickstart and build confidence within the industries to grow. And that's how we support them through that journey.
Dr. Chua, you are a very good salesperson. You make it sound so sexy, so attractive. If I were to coming from the conventional manufacturing sector, I would be already like, shut up, man. I'll take my money. I'll work with you. I'll take all your advice. Just get going. Don't drag on anymore. And I also like the approach that you are doing, how you're doing it. Instead of lecturing you, okay, this would be very good. Take my advice. Instead of that, I would show you how are the benefits that you are going to get when you're adapting this, and how approachable it is actually to transition, so that it reduces the fear if I'm coming from the conventional manufacturing sector, so I like the approach that you were using, and I hope the company leaders out there, if you are from the conventional manufacturing sector, perhaps you can take the advice, the golden nugget from Dr. Chua and also Howie, have the right mindset, and also do it gradually. And before we wrap this up, to my co-host, Hugo, do you have any questions for both Dr. Chua and Howie before we end this whole session of the evening?
I think overall today we tried to touch on the surface of many aspects on the impact of digitalization.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of came to a conclusion that at the end of the day, it depends on the culture, on the mindset. And there could be certain solutions or policies in place that makes this transition possible, that makes people and leaders more willing to adopt. Of course, we can also discuss a lot about infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it's about whether we have the intention to actually make this happen.
Mm.
So perhaps to wrap this up, for both our guests, Mr. Howie and Dr. Chua, do you have any words that you want to say to our viewers today? And,
Maybe.
How does your school or your training center have a place in this transition?
Exactly. To remind once again of our audience, like what Hugo mentioned just now, what institutions you're from, what is Forward School, what is Smart Factory, what do you do, and how people can get in touch with you. Maybe Dr. Chua can start first.
Yeah, sure. So, so the Malaysian Smart Factory at the Selangor Human Resource Development Center, generally we are a talent development organization. We do our best to support the industries and the community in terms of their journey towards digital transformation. So if in any case you would like to understand more about how technologies come together, the Smart Factory is a community space for you to come and visit. It is a living lab. You can definitely come by. We welcome everybody. Of course, at the moment, due to the MCO situation, it's going to be rather tough, but we are working on how we can help you through virtual clinics and also through virtual tours soon. So just log on to our website, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can look me up on LinkedIn as well and get in touch. And I think the parting words would be in terms of digital transformation or digital economy. It really starts with the people and the organization. Not so much on the technology side, because technology is more or less always there. It's always adapting, but it's the people and the organization, the culture, the mindset that will really determine, whether you take the next step forward, and of course, whether you maintain a very sustainable ecosystem, a sustainable digital transformation in your journey in the industry. Yeah.
Okay, how about Howie?
Yeah, I think for us at Forward School, it's really clear that we are here to encourage people to not just upskill, but really be creators of technology. And our vision is not just the training company in that sense, right? I think there are quite a handful. And I think what sort of signals the seriousness is basically us focusing on programs that are more than 6 months, right? In terms of length, I think we have a lot of courses and classes and workshops that are, or boot camps, some call it 2 to 4 months. We do provide that as well, but at the same time, we do have a 2 years Nitro degree in applied software engineering. And I think that would be our biggest challenge. And I think we are not so much, we don't call ourselves an edtech tech company. I mean, that's the buzzword nowadays. Everyone calls themselves an ed tech. We are not so much on technology, but rather we are a tech education. We are trying to disrupt the tech education. So it's not so much about the tech, but we are trying to find ways and more new models in which what would be the best way for us to transfer technology knowledge in a sense, right? Which is why for our 2 years program, we work very closely with the industry. We see that the industry needs to be actively involved, not just when they want to find talents and then they go out, they can find talent. There needs to be a bit more commitment and intentionality to partner with education institutions, right? But obviously for Forward School, there are a lot of things that we are trying to solve. I mean, one of the biggest thing is obviously, the speed that we move, right? Which is why at this point in time, we are not under the Ministry of Education, because we see that it might not necessarily help us in our speed. That's one. I mean, if the traditional education institutions, how long they will take to change a module. So it's very hard for us, where we hope to disrupt, to be under it in a sense. So at this point in time, we are trying to figure out a new model where we can offer to anyone, for that matter, to have a solid tech education that will prepare them for the industry. Yeah. So that's what Forward School is all about, and that's what I personally believe is worthwhile my time to be focusing on at this point.
Mm-hmm. And with people like Howie and Dr. Chua, future seems promising for us, especially for corporate leaders of Malaysia, regardless whether you're from service sector or you're from manufacturing sector. If you can resonate with the things that we have discussed just now, if you are in the service sector, of course, you can look for Mr. Howie at Forward School, in software engineering and such. If you're in manufacturing, you can go ahead and talk to Dr. Chua. How can I transition to the digital economy? And after that, we will share the respective informations about the institutions that they are affiliate with. So rest assured, after that, you can get in touch with them and we roll on the snowball from there onward. Yeah. And to wrap this up, any words from my co-host, Hugo?
I think I love what Mr. Howie have said right at the beginning of his wrap-up. He says that we should not just consume technology. We have to be at the forefront. We have to be creators, right? And I think it's being repeated so many times throughout this session that all this tech and talent is not something that you can just pick from the shelf when you want it. It is actually something that you need to invest in it. So for our viewers today, and of course this video will be repurposed and it will appear again in another format, right? And for all those who are watching, I think this conversation is a Kickstarter, right? Like we have been talking about how to make technology sexy, right? At the end of the day, it's the lack of awareness, the beginning of digital and tech education, and the adoption. Hopefully, this will be the starter conversation. Back to you, Peter.
Right, thank you. And with that, we'll wrap this session. Again, if you have any questions, we will include in the information of Dr. Chua and Howie afterwards. You can talk directly with them, and we get things in. Let's make changes for the digital economy after MCO. Thank you for watching. See you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Howie. Thank you, Dr. Chua.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.